Every January, right? A small Swiss village becomes the unofficial capital of the world. Private jets land, cameras roll, and lots of cool panels promise solutions to all the questions that, you know, have the grip on the world. And somehow every single global crisis survives just another year. Davos 2026 still ongoing as the time of recording right now, which means the talking isn't over, and neither are the performances that we see there. Because, and you notice, Davos isn't where the world gets fixed, it's where power basically just explains itself. Sawadee Krab, and welcome to another episode here for the Fun Report, Mindful Media and Political Power Performance Communication, mindful communication, which is something that would be cool to see at Davos. And as always, there's maybe like one or two people who try. The rest, The thing is, Davos always happens when the world feels unstable. Now, the thing is, the world always feels unstable because it's always in January. So the world is always unstable, but Davos always it's this meeting place of the powerful people of the world where they're going to go and talk and fix things. That's not coincidence, though. That's like, hey, there's something bad happening. We all meet in Davos to fix things. That's not coincidence, right? That's framing. That's purpose. That's positioning. Yeah, every brand, you know that probably, every brand needs a strong brand positioning, and the World Economic Forum positions itself as the place to bring all the powerful people together where they can just talk to each other and fix the world, make the world a better place for you and for me, and you know it. The thing is, though, when democratic legitimacy is like, I can't believe I'm saying this in 2026, but when democratic legitimacy is shaky, and that's a nice way of saying it, when it's shaky, elites that are shaking it, they're seeking control, visibility. Because as we know in media studies, right, visibility means power. If I can control who sees me and how people see me, I can control narratives. And the World Economic Forum is a great stage for exactly that. So Davos, functions as like this stabilizer of sorts. It's like, hey, look, we have the World Economic Forum. It's in neutral Switzerland. It's in Davos. And here we just talk to fix the problems that the world has. Who actually caused the problems? No one's asking that, right? And honestly, there are no decisions being made. There's no decision making there. The only thing that's being done is like reassurance is being given. Like it's reassurance making rather than decision making. And that's on purpose again, because when institutions, when they can't deliver certainty, what they do deliver is they deliver presence. We're here. Look at us. Performance. Rather than actual results. And I mean, it's great to have it, because what would be better to calm global anxiety like a panel in Switzerland titled "Rebuilding Trust." So now, after hating on Davos for the first 3 minutes of this podcast, just to make sure we're on the same page, right? and don't get me wrong, the initial idea. No, not the initial idea, because I think it's exactly what it was planned to be. The abstract idea of what it could be could, in theory, be a good idea. But what it actually is, it's access before outcomes, because you pay for access there, right? It's not a negotiating table. It's not like an even playing field. It's not. It's an exchange of prestige. If you're there, you shake hands with the powerful people. The powerful people get to know you. They see you. You're making deals. You're getting favors. You're handing out favors. That's what Davos is for. Yeah, you don't win in Davos by passing laws and making the world better. You win by being seen as relevant, by being seen as someone that has power. And as you know, like most seats in Davos, right, are paid for, unless you already hold lots of power. Then, of course, you get invited. And media coverage of who's there and who's present and who's at a panel matters way more than what's actually being said in the rooms. Yeah, the World Economic Forum (WEF) right started as elite coordination, and now, as if this wasn't bad enough already, now it's, I want to say, elite self-legitimation. I'm here, so I'm part of the elite, so I'm legit, you're legit, let's figure something out. And we talked about this theory before. As you know, always a few theories here on the podcast. We talked about Bourdieu before, if you remember that. We talked about cultural capital before on the podcast. And Davos is a prime example for cultural capital. Davos converts money, and from money you receive access. So it converts money to access to symbolic authority because, hey, well, you're in Davos, you must be somewhat important. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there. Money, right? So that's basically what they do. That's the whole concept of the World Economic Forum. Now, if you think about that, is that really global governance? Money, access, power? Is that global governance? Is that how governance is supposed to work? It's LinkedIn on steroids. It's global networking with better catering. It's like an invite-only LinkedIn, or it's a LinkedIn with like X like sign-up fees to get your important badge. That's what it is. And to make this point even clearer, while I move on to point 3 on my agenda, to make this point even clearer, who is in Davos? Of course, all the politicians are in Davos, right? If you thought I'm going to hate on Trump now, you're right. But he's not the only one. But Trump is, of course, also in Davos, right? And he keeps dominating the feed because he always does. They're either to be shit on or to shit on others. And do you think Donald Trump goes to Davos to cooperate? Of course not. He comes to Davos. He goes there to command attention. I'm here. Look at me. I'm the most important person in the room, right? And what does Davos give him? Elite audience. They give him global amplifications everywhere. A perfect me versus them stage. It's perfect for him. It's a perfect theater for someone like him. For all politicians, of course, but right now he's the person that's mostly in focus because of, well, all the stuff he's been saying. And the funny thing is that his base distrusts elites, but they love watching elites react. So him being there talking to elites is perfect. And then he still makes deals with them. What's from a communication point of view really interesting though is like his power strategy. Because he uses something we would call performative sovereignty. Okay, that's how we would call it in communication studies. And it's something that should not work, but he makes it work. Yeah, and what you do usually when it comes to performative sovereignty, as per what we discussed in class, you appear decisive, you ignore process, you let reaction confirm authority. The Greenland rhetoric, right? We have to take it. If we don't take it, China is gonna take it. The Venezuelan language, like the acting president of Venezuela stuff, the tariff threats, all those things, they serve a purpose. And the purpose is to project control in a fragmented world. We all complain about that what we say is get taken out of context, gets clipped, and so on. He lives on that. He doesn't want a 3-hour speech to be shown like in like a whole 3-hour thing. He just wants the highlight clips. That's why he can say things like acting president of Venezuela. That's why he can say like they call the WEF, they called me daddy, and things like this, because those short clips resonate with the audience that he's playing to. And that's how it works. So this performative serenity shouldn't work, but he makes it work. Yeah, all this bravado and all those things on purpose, just for the short attention span, the short clips. And when we talk about media theories, again, one that we discussed to a great extent here on the podcast before, Jean Baudrillard talked about hyperreality, that we're living in a simulation. And it's not like a computer simulation, but we're living in a world driven by simulations. Simulation meaning in media studies, it means that the real world is being altered, and we react to the alteration of the real world rather than what's actually real. So here we also say that authority in a simulation like this doesn't need any legal grounding anymore if it looks authoritative long enough. So if something looks like it is authoritative, like it is legal, even though it is not, for long enough, we will accept it as the rule, as authority, and act as if it was legal. Okay? And Trump, he doesn't need Davos approval for anything. Just to reflect or to have the simulation of authority, he needs Davos as a mirror. And that's exactly what it is, and that's exactly what he is using it for. But like I said, he's not the only one there, right? Lots of European politicians. German Chancellor was there, Friedrich Merz. Macron with his sunglasses that made the sunglass corporation stocks shooting through the roof, was there. And they do say a few things that sound right at times, but still feel pretty weak. Because what Europe does, most European leaders, right? So I'm just going to throw them all together right now because I can't go through country by country. But what lots of European leaders do is they focus on rules. Very German, for example, but very European. They focus on rules, corporations, institutions. We have to stick together. Europe has to be together. The message is consistent. Yeah? The problem is it's consistency in messaging, but there's no leverage behind it. Yeah, Europe speaks very often as if the old order still exists. And I know. So some like Macron and especially the Canadian Prime Minister, they mentioned like that the old order cannot come back. But that's just few and far in between. And the way they say it and the way they act afterwards is still like, hey, we still want to make it work with the US. Yeah, so the world's moving on, and as you can see, big power players try to have like a big grip on everything, and Europe's like, oh no, maybe they don't mean it. Nah, they're not gonna do that. We gonna play ball with them. Yeah. And I'm no political expert, clearly, right? I'm just analyzing the communication. Okay, so from a communications point of view, especially if you're listening to Mark Rutte, I don't know how you will pronounce him. I mean, oh God. From a communications point of view, that's just terrible. I mean, he does everything in his power to appease Trump, sure, but do you want this from the NATO speaker, NATO chief of whatever he is, right? So the thing is, right now, communication-wise, right, Europe is stuck between the US, which is like very unilateral, China's very long-term pragmatism, right? They're all about like the long-term goal plans, and of course internal European fragmentation. Because then we're not even on the same page. So Europe performs moral authority, which is good, sure. You need moral authority, but they perform it rather than focusing on strategic power, which would actually be helpful to them. Well, like the theory here would be like also one we discussed before, Jürgen Habermas, public sphere. We talked about this. Of course, we have to mention when we talk politics, right? Habermas talks about how rational discourse is being held in public spheres. Back then in public places, now in forums, online, at the WF, and so on. And yeah, and In theory, rational discourse would assume that there's equal power on each side of the discourse, but it doesn't exist any longer. The power hasn't shifted. It's been shifted for a long time, but the power has never been equal, and the power is going or growing apart further and further. And so it's kind of like Europe is giving TED Talks like, hey, we should do this and we should do that, while others move troops and tariffs. And Europe's like, we're gonna stand up for what is right. Ooh, wow. Hey, what you doing? That's kind of how it feels from a communications point of view. Okay. And that said, yeah, we also have to discuss a little bit, like, of course, like how the Ukraine was represented in Davos, like how Zelensky came across. Because Zelensky, and again, it's not a political podcast. I'm not a Zelensky fanboy or whatever. And my private opinion might be different too, or might surprise you. But from a communications point of view, he basically said like, hey, yo, Europe, what's up? Europe always talks a lot, basically what I just said, but doesn't act a lot. Also what I just said. He said, last year I was here, we talked about we have to do something. 1 year has passed, nothing has been done. I summarize his speech, right? So he uses Davos, WEF, right now to pressure Europe very directly. He says like, America takes out Maduro. Yeah, cool. They say this guy criminal, take him out. Europe doesn't do anything about Putin. That's what he said. Of course, apples, oranges, understood, but he's trying to pressure Europe with like how he communicates. Okay, why? Because like apparently private diplomacy has stalled. Didn't get him anywhere. We're like talking privately in closed rooms. Didn't get him where he believes they should be. So now he's using the public sphere for that. He says Ukraine doesn't need more sympathy, it needs commitments. That's basically what he said. And so what he's doing and in Davos right now, he's using Davos as a moral amplifier right now. So he's trying to say, okay, yeah, all the institutions here right now that could help us, they're frozen, they freeze. So I'm gonna use this for what I can use it for. I'm trying to amplify my voice right now. He very well knows, or at least his team also knows, that amplification does not equal action though. But he's like, well, I haven't seen any action, so the least I can do is probably trying to amplify my voice right now and get it out in the news channels and so on. You know, what we see here, I'm looking like Guy Debord's Society of the Spectacle theory, right? Is that appearing to care, what Europe does very well, replaces doing something. Yeah, so we are kind of like faking being part of the spectacle. We're watching it all unfold. Like, oh no, that's terrible. Someone should do something. Why is no one doing anything? That's Europe's part in all of this. And again, yeah, just to make sure, and I don't want to apologize all the time, but not a political podcast, communications podcast. From a political point of view, I do understand it's very difficult to move troops or whatever. Get it? I get it. From a communications point of view, that's how it feels though, okay? And every time when we say at the WF, someone says, we should do something about this, then the applause is loud, and the policy follow-up is non-existent, very silent. And this leads me to the real pattern, right? Where we're coming to almost a close here of today's episode. Permission is basically a global currency now. Because Davos is not about censoring anyone, it's more about who's allowed to speak seriously. There are certain narratives that are being pushed via WF, they are called responsible. Others are quietly excluded. Like, no one's going to talk about this. We don't want to hear about that. We just don't have any stage. We don't have any forum for it. We don't have any space for it. And if the wrong person says the right thing, it also doesn't travel because, hey, there's no stage for you. So if you look at this from a media point of view, right, in this fragmented media world, just being right, yeah, having truth on your side isn't enough. Permission to speak in the right places, on the right stages, determines visibility, determines power. And we talked about this in the very last podcast. We talked about a theory called psychopolitics. by Byung-Chul Han, right? So we said, okay, power works in that way that, um, yeah, it shapes what feels sayable, but not by banning speech. So not by actively censoring, but by making you feel like what can you say or what should you say so that you are being allowed to reach a wider audience. Basically, what can I say so that the WEF puts me on a stage? That's what you think there. What can I say so people applaud me at the WEF? Which then brings me also to my own theory, which will be available soon. Reality in Beta, sign up right now under realityinbeta.com, so you get the notification when it drops, aiming around May. The global order isn't collapsing, but it's being endlessly updated. Yeah, we're in this beta version where like you're trying to the algorithm of like how the world works is being updated constantly. And we're adjusting, because if you're not adjusting, you might not be heard. And that's the real problem. I mean, welcome to geopolitics, basically, now moderated by or for brand safety. That's more, is it geopolitics or is it branding? Hard to say these days, right? So I'm wrapping up with this. There's enough WF talk for now because you will own nothing and you will feel happy. Own this podcast episode by downloading it now. Power today. Power today. Visibility is power. Yeah. Power is also very, very, very performative. If you don't perform, do you really have power if no one sees that you have power? And power is permission based. Who gives you the stage to perform your power? Yeah, decisions happen elsewhere. They don't happen in the big forum at WF. They happen somewhere in behind back doors, closed rooms. You know that. And the meaning shaping happens on stage, right? Meaning happens based on performance. So Davos doesn't show us where the world's heading towards, doesn't show us where the world is going. It shows us who's still allowed to narrate the journey. So that's it for this week's episode. As always, keep your guard up. Don't confuse prestige with truth. And I see you in the next episode. Sawadee Cup.